just don't be one of these people who kind of interact with attitude like they know everything, like I call trading standards, I know this, I know that. Trading standards just give you an idea. They don't know what happened with the vehicle. They don't know whether you are serious or not serious. They're just advising you what to do. So it doesn't matter. Somebody has like trading standards or Citizens Advice Bureau advising you what to. They're advising you to do on assumption there is something serious, right? In court of law, regards to the Consumer Rights Act, the end solution can be completely different, where you could be even the biggest loser ever compared to the seller, right? As we'll give you a little example of the situation, right? We had a customer calling in, right? Sounded like an old lady, right? And the situation was, she bought in a car in June, right, from the used car seller. Car was great as she described, she went home, then she realized, because the seller advised the timing belt don't need changing, right? Fair enough, for them it doesn't need changing, right? Maybe they looked visually, they don't need changing, and then obviously I don't know where, and I was asking her questions, right? Slowly, kind of bit of interrogation, just to understand the situation, right? And then they start making some other problems with the car, like there's some sort of DPF issue, some sort of sensors. But when I had asked, has anyone had a look at the vehicle, or who had a look at the car, she said no. I said, how do you know timing belt is not being changed, or it's not being changed as she states? It's overdue for 3 years, right? I said, has anyone sort of mentioned you that? Then she started getting a bit sort of funny. I said, look, okay, that this is already rings the alarm bells of overall situation of the client, right? As I mentioned at the beginning, I said, okay, why it happened, what happened? The car is drivable. She's been advised by trading centers not to drive the car, so that means if the timing, there's a, to understand whether to take somebody to court, you need to evaluate how big is the problem on used car, considering it's a 9-year-old vehicle. Is it of satisfactory quality, right? Is it because you have an ego problem and you just want to complain because you've got nothing else better to do in life, right? It's your problem if you haven't checked or you took seller's advice for it, right? I understand misleading, you get into some sort of liability issues, but I mean, if somebody gives you incorrect information, they might give you incorrect information because they assumed that's how it is. They checked it, they mechanic had the look, and they're coming back with that answer, right? So you're not here to try to say who's right or who's wrong, right? But you need to evaluate the cost of the problem against the cost of going to court. If you're not a person who is unable to draw the claim, right, to phrase the right points, what you're gonna do, right to reject or right to repair, even they said the belt doesn't need doing, you can legally span that phrase how you want it, They might decide it doesn't need doing, you decided it needs doing, also it's just a word that sort of, is there any supportive paperwork, and what would be, let's say, manufacturer's recommended replacement intervals or times, right? So therefore, let's say, I think the car was Renault Captur, right, as an idea. So that timing belt would be replacement between 380 and 500 pounds, right? So for that lady taking them to the court, right, you need to evaluate what you're going to do. Reject the car, you will lose the claim, you know, because the car is in satisfactory condition, you know. You didn't check it, or if you have approval, okay, you can't reject the car because its timing belt not replaced or service not done, right? You can refer back to the seller, explaining your points. If they're refusing to do anything, you know, you have right to repair, you know. I'm talking about now picture of every situations are different, but it's a 9-year-old car. Let's say it needs a timing belt, right? She's not driving it, you know. So that means you can send them this situation, say, look, this is what happened. You can refer it back to the seller. If seller refuses, you know, you go and repair this vehicle yourself and then take it to the court. You know, it depends how the judge will look at it, you know, what evidence and what else will be there, you know. And let's say between 380 to 500 pounds wasting your time doing something and considering obviously what would be the car's value, what you paid for it compared to the market compared to market value, you know, the prices, balance and probability, the condition of the other car, and would on those cars belts would it be replaced, yes or no, you know. So these factors you can negotiate when you're buying a vehicle. So the problem was, why did that person took seller's word for it, and why she haven't checked, right, what are the manufacturer specifications. You could have just asked that to the seller, you know. If you're unaware and you're an ordinary consumer, you don't know, you ask somebody who might know, you know, maybe your local mechanic, or you might just Google it, and you might just call the dealer, right? So if that belt, right, if they said, let's assume the belt doesn't need changing, right, all the liability goes to the seller. If they're telling you it doesn't need changing, great, right? If you drive and the belt snaps and then you find out it is due, right, but she couldn't answer, where did she get that information? It's 3 years due. Who told her that, right? So that's just a questionable thing, questionable issue. And then if it snaps, right, then you can pick up the service history, but that will be, then you just drive as normal, you know. If it snaps, you go back to the seller, you know. And if it turns out it is overdue and the belt snapped, that will be seller's responsibility, you know. It's not of satisfactory quality, you know. So, but if it drives, right, until it snaps, let's just say. So all of these claims, right, is from the people who sometimes misinterpreting the consumer. You can sue anyone, right? But it's a Consumer Goods Act, right? And it doesn't just work exactly as the consumer law says, right? For used goods, it's a used good, it's a used car. It's not. It works really well, like I said in some previous videos, with brand new goods, right? It works amazing. But with used goods, there is a balance of probability, you know, of obviously the way the vehicle is being described, etc. But vehicle has to be of satisfactory quality, you know. Even not service car, you know, and even not timing belt replaced, is of satisfactory quality, you know, because it's 9-year-old car, you know. There will be, it doesn't mean buying a used car you would not need to spend some money on some improvements, right? Maybe on better tires if you wish, right? When it comes like it's dangerous, right, or safety concern, right? Again, let's say the pads are 10% worn. I mean 90% worn, right? It's a safety concern, right? But you can't reject the car because of worn pads. You see where I'm coming from? So, because anything regards to which can be easily resolved, you know, because in the first 30 days you have a right to reject. Anything which could be sensibly and easily replaced or found a solution to, you know, missing trim, maybe you notice, maybe there's missing some tools, right? Maybe there is a cigarette butt hole, you know, maybe the tire is too cracked and you picked this up. You can obviously, or if there is a bigger dent, right, and they didn't disclose, you can't reject the cars because of, I don't know, let's say bulb, suddenly they deliver the car and one of the headlights doesn't work, right? It's not like you can reject the car because of something is in an easy nature, right? Even sometimes, let's say, as the car has been idling, they're leaving these cars there, it's not been road tested properly, maybe come from the auction, and the DBF gets blocked. You know, it's just, there have to be something seriously wrong, right? Yes, it's inconvenient, but I think most of the people assume anything, they will just reject the car and they will get compensation, not a compensation, they're a full refund. No, it is a used car, you know, and all your rights kind of goes into the gray area, you know. It's not just white, it's black and white, right? It depends what it is. People get always emotional because they spend the money and then they take the car, then they, as in this example with that lady, there was it started because there's something was missing in the car, right? Something probably silly, I don't know, maybe let's say a tool, a jack, or maybe, I don't know, the glue expired, or air compressor, you know. And it started straight away. People start assuming they've been sold a shit car and something is not right, and they start, without even getting a second opinion, you know, a simple fact as that. You don't really need engineer reports or anything like that. You just need 3 different people, professional opinions, right? What one garage thinks, what other garage thinks, and what other garage thinks. You know, you can go for this consultation. They might charge you £20, we'll have a look, or £50, we'll give you opinion. So you just go to 3 places, see what they say, you know, and that is kind of a solution. You give them opinion, you know, how big is the problem, how big is the hassle, you know, instead of start taking somebody, wasting your time, assuming you're right. Yes, you have rights, but again, every claim, every argument has circumstances. It's a circumstantial evidence. How it happened, what happened, right? Everything what you're gonna claim or say, you will have to prove, right? And like I said to you, it's a used goods. They have to be of satisfactory quality, you know. And if the car turns out to be in satisfactory quality, and let's say the tires haven't been done, this haven't been done, you can go back to the seller and then negotiate on those issues, you know. Like I said, in this situation, if the lady is right about a timing belt, you know, they don't have to do anything, right? That means if they refuse the timing belt replacement, if they want, they can, you know, because it is still satisfactory. If it will snap, it ain't gonna be, you know, like anything else, you know. And then you can issue them if they decline your what you're asking for, and if all the circumstances are whether you're right or they're right, whatever it is, you can assume and do whatever you want to do. You know, you can issue incorrect claim and you're going to lose the claim. Simple. The judge will throw a claim out because they will have a counterclaim. You know, so it doesn't mean. What the consumers need to understand, you're not smart, right? Every sensible business has the right insurances, has legal covers, and they in a trade, they are smarter than you. I'm not talking about people who scamming, right? Who's selling a complete dud, right? Just a shite car, right? I'm not talking about those people, but I'm talking about sensible people where people just wanna, they have ego problems and they think they have rights. You know, you are limited with your consumer rights, right? You only use goods unless it is suddenly not of satisfactory quality and breaks down, right? That's different, and then you can argue, but you can't just think you have rights. You're gonna do whatever everyone knows the law. Like I said, the seller knows the law too. You can jump around emotionally around, argue and say you're right, and what's gonna change? If you're gonna bring emotional claim because you just assume you're right, as most of the claims what I see is ego driven, and there are situations where simply consumer losing the case because they didn't have any sensible proof. You know, they think they're gonna go because of the consumer rights said this, I will win the case. No, you will turn out as such as the biggest loser. In her case, if let's say the value of the belt is £500, she just sounded like she was gonna make things up, right? And because she just thinks she's unhappy, you know. For £500, if they decline it, you will not be able to reject the car. Let's assume the car is 10 grand within the small claims limit. You know, you have to pay the percentage of the £10,000 to put a claim in. You know, so let's just say, and plus when the court date will come and court hearing will be, let's just minimize it. It will be around £800, right? What's the point? You know, and it's gonna take a year. So we're not gonna drive the car now for a year. It just doesn't make sense, you know. This is what I'm trying to say. You know, if you find if you have a proof your car is misdescribed, surely you can do it, but you're not going to be able to reject the cars. There's sometimes people find the spring broke, right, on suspension spring. They can break, you know, on a 5-year-old car. It can break on a 10-year-old car, on a 20-year-old car, you know. But it doesn't make the car bad. You know, you change the spring, 150, 180 pounds, and you drive again, you know. You can't reject the car. So there are these type of people who think they know the law, they know everything, you know. But again, it's great, you know, but you remember the other people know too, you know. And it doesn't mean because you're emotional and you have ego-driven problems and you don't understand. Even judge will tell you, every consumer buying a used cars has to have reasonable understanding about the used cars. You have to have reasonable expectations, right? 9-year-old car, 10-year-old car is end of the lifespan, right? Pretty much. Value zero, technically, scrap value, right? So, you know, unless when you buy newer cars or more expensive cars, again, you're buying something expensive, 10 years old, they're still gonna break down. It's just, you need to understand whether it is within your means and budget to keep up with the maintenance of luxury sport cars, let's say, right? Because your repair will be 5 grand, 10 grand. It's just the reality. And if you don't have that money to maintain and keep up with the luxury of sport cars, just don't buy it. You know, it doesn't mean seller will have to fix that, something which is not up to your standard or scratch, right? So I'm just saying, so please don't pretend you know the law. Remember, most sellers know the law too, you know, because even you go to the court, they have some sort of service insurance covers for the legal costs and for the goods or services they sell, right? And if somebody will make a claim, it's gonna go to the court, and if they have a good cash balance, for them it doesn't matter. They don't care whether you go to the court or not, because it's gonna be paid, you know, by the insurance company. And you know, in any insurance contract, which in my opinion is unlawful and makes the other parties lie, they say, do not admit the liability. You know, even if you know you're liable, they encouraging you not to take responsibility. That's why all the claims, and no one will admit the liability because of the liability costs, which can go against the claimant or defendant, right? So this is the nature of litigation, you know. So like I said, big sellers, they don't care whether you're going to take them to court or not, you know. It's just up to you whether you want to waste the money. And in small claims courts, you're not going to be able to claim any solicitor fees back or anything like that, you know. So you will be the biggest loser, right? Unless you have a valid claim, there's engine problem, right? Something like gearbox faulty, engine issue, compression issue, or knocking issues, or anything which is mechanical or electrical failure, right? Significant, which makes the car completely not of satisfactory quality, you know. Like I said, there can be injectors going, you know. There can be some other issues, right? But seller don't have to say they're gonna fix the car. You know, they can say, no, we're not gonna do it, or they can offer you 50-50, depends on what's in its sales contract. Obviously, if they don't offer, if they don't grant it, you know, you can take the car somewhere else, repair it, and claim the money back within sort of 60 months and see how well it will go in a court. Vehicle rejection is the biggest problem. Like I said, that comes under the question mark. There has to be a serious problem with the car, you know. And again, it's the big factor plays the mileage on a car, price of the car, and age of the car, right? Every situation is looked up differently, and always remember, there's always circumstances, you know. Not every circumstance will be disclosed to you right at the beginning, you know, and the circumstance is going to raise later on when you might get an engineer's report, or the seller might get an engineer's report, and you can pick holes, small holes. In any case, you can play the game, you know. Your claim have to be valid, right? Sometimes there are situations where if there's something 50-50, and if the expert witness or engineer that writes the report, if the report is vague, it needs conclusive evidence of proof. The burden of proof lies with this. If it's something 50-50 where you can't 100% say is this, you're more likely will be not successful, right? So that's why it's difficult. And once you want to get a good expert witness, these reports will cost, depends on the situation, from 750 upwards, right? So that means your expenses of the claim and litigation can be absurd. So that means you have to evaluate whether that is the right action for you, you know. Or simple action is you bought a car, it's okay, if again, if there's nothing seriously wrong, like engine problems, seriously, right? It for you, it's easier to basically ask seller to rectify, arrange the meeting, you talking through the issues, get some expert opinions, right? Get some mobile mechanic or anyone just to have a look and see, get some advice, right? And see how serious it can be, right? And then speak with the seller for repairs. If they refuse, you know, you can fix the car elsewhere, and then if you want, you can put a claim in for the repairs, which will be much easier to prove than rejecting a car, you know. Or if, like I said, or maybe within the, if you get some engineer out and find the car is complete dud, right, then obviously you can try do that. But always the easiest thing is fix that vehicle and just sell it, right? Because otherwise it just gets very sort of complicated, right? And it could also not go, it will also might not go to your favor, right? Especially if you will not have a solid evidence, you know. I'm not talking about failed engine, right? Where simply even seller doesn't want to fix it, it's going to lose the claim because there's liability, you know. Pretty much the judge will look, consumer don't really have to look under the bonnet in the first 6 months, right? And I'm absolutely support that. Car have to have a service. If it's not been serviced, or it's not, or if it's or something needs doing, they should advise, look, you will need to replace pads in the next 3 months, you will need to replace tires because they are, let's say, 3 mil. We're not going to do it, we're not going to do the service, we're not going to do the timing belt. And this timing belt, they're taking their own risk. If the timing belt snaps, they can write down how quickly the timing belt needs to be done, but that have to be documented. If everything's documented right, they can sell that car, you know. But they have to explain that to you, you know. They have to explain that that's why the price is A compared to these, compared to what's in the market, you know, and we are selling for this price. But they have to explain that, you know. If they don't, obviously you have a more leeway. Most of the time they just don't, right? And this is how they sell the cars. So the best thing, you have to find a seller who has a flexible returns, right? This is what you want, you know, flexible returns. Even let's say you're suddenly unhappy within 14 days, you're just rejecting a car, right? Even they say, let's say there will be penalty of £200, £300 or something, and you're going to get money back. But just find that seller who has that flexible return, you know. And if you don't want to pay money for the inspection, you know, at least you have that flexible return. Just don't buy from shady people. Don't buy from some sort of horsepower motors or good motors or used cars for less, right? Or something like that, where it already sounds like, I don't know, from some of the shady names, you know. It just doesn't, just don't buy from there, you know. Ask where the car comes from, who used it before. If it's been used for mobility, right? If it's been for taxi, police, highway maintenance, just don't buy the car. It's very simple. Only where it comes from, who had it before, where they bought it from. Then go for full service history, 2 keys. Simple, probably four rules what I said, you know. And then go check the car if you want. If passing basics, right? If they can't answer these questions, or they just vague, leave it. Go to the next one. Rather buy less spec, but what you need, you know, because once you start going for the high specs, specific models, then you start searching, then you realize there's nothing much to choose from. You know, you have to shift what you want, you know, or might shift what car you want, you know. So These are the basic rules. Call the seller, where it comes from, who had this car, where did you bought this car from, does it have a full main dealer service history, does it have both keys. 4 or 5 rules, right? If none of these are within your values, don't buy the car. Don't look at the car because it's cheaper than anywhere else. These 4 or 5 rules, what I said to you, defines quality of the good used vehicle. If the people would follow basic simple principles where none of the trading standards doesn't understand and none of the citizens advice give you any advice, right? They just giving you advice of the Consumer Rights Act. But if you're gonna be an idiot, you will end up an idiot. It's very simple, you know? If you will ignore all these very, very simple rules, right? Why main dealer service history? Yes, it doesn't mean the car will be good, but at least you know it's been serviced in right times. Quality parts has been used, at least for the basic maintenance. It doesn't mean the main dealer within the lifespan of the vehicle, all the advisories what's been given to that customer, right? It doesn't mean that customer repaired those advisories at the dealer, you know? They could go somewhere else, get a cheaper parts, get a cheaper repairer, right? If you're going to repair cars on a budget, the repair quality will be same. You know, if you're going to cheap mechanic, you'll get cheap, quick, shitty repair. Cheap parts, they're going to fail much quicker, wear out much quicker, and you just have warranty problems. It's very simple, you know? Wherever you're going to cut the corners, that corner will come back and bite you in the ass, right? So the choice is sort of yours, you know? Or alternatively, you can buy the cars from the main dealer and give it to your mechanic to fix it, right? Or you buy main dealer equivalent part, which is sort of OE standard, you know? Let's say if the Brembo makes the brakes for the, let's say, Mercedes, you buy the Brembo from the shop and ask your mechanic to fix it. That's completely different, right? So you're buying original quality parts and fit it, right? So hope this helps, and don't be the person with ego problems, you know?